that these things are extremely risky. The Canadian government has been in denial about that until only just a couple days ago. Now they're going to give you another vaccine that's safer. You know, when the CDC official said to me, actually there was 3 CDC officials, top officials, and there was vaccine industry official. And the vaccine industry official said after the CDC people alleged that I might be not smart and Ali Mohammed might not be smart in doing this vaccine moratorium, the vaccine industry official actually said, "Do you know how many people you're going to die, that are going to die because of you?" And I said to him, "Do you know how many people are dying now because of you?" When we started the meeting, I basically said there was a lawyer there, there was an attorney there, and he could feel the tension in the room. He was kind of a consultant for the consortium. And he says, you know, the first thing that we should do is establish trust in this room. I said to him, "Sir, I'm telling you that's an impossibility. I don't trust these people at all." And I said, "I want you first of all to know," when he said this to me, I said to him, "Excuse me." I said, "You have some nerve saying that to me when you do not have definitive cost-benefit, risk-benefit analysis on any of the vaccines that you're promoting." See, what that means is this. And he says, "Oh yes, we have definitive cost-benefit, risk-benefit analysis." I said, "Excuse me, I don't believe you have what you say you have. Because I've looked for it. I've asked for it. It doesn't exist." "Oh yes," he says, "we do have cost-benefit analysis," he says, stuttering. I says, "Yes, you may have some cost-benefit analysis, but you haven't considered all of the costs in your analysis now, have you? And you don't have any risk-benefit analysis, which means that you do not know whether you're killing more people than you're saving from these vaccines." And then when I went to Harvard, they taught me and every other public health official in the world that before you enact healthcare policy legislation, you better be damn sure that what you're doing is saving lives, or you don't do it. I want you to know that to date, no definitive cost-benefit, risk-benefit analysis has ever been done on any of these vaccines, yet they push them through us. So, at any rate, he kind of slithered into the corner and shut up. And then they all went off, they bought copies of the book Emerging Viruses, and they slithered off to their little cubicles to read the books. I heard from David Satcher, who had invited me down to the CDC, and I told him I wouldn't go down unless he paid more than lip service to the issues, and I told him I wouldn't come down, and among the things that I wanted him to be considering, and I wouldn't come down to the CDC in Atlanta unless he considered was the role that his agency, the Centers for Disease Control, played in developing the vaccine that most plausibly delivered AIDS to the world. So I have yet to hear from him, but I know he's reading the book. And anyway, read Vera Shriver's book, read Neil Miller's book, read Barbara Lowe Fisher's book, read Galen Langto's books. They talk about the horrifying reality of DPT vaccines. I think we're getting to the end of this program, and I don't want to belabor the situation, only to say that they tell us contraindications. They don't tell us, however, what the contaminants are in these vaccines, and indeed they are many. You wanted to see that one? Aren't you guys getting tired yet? Okay. See, SB40, contaminants, formaldehyde, simian foamy retroviruses and the polio vaccines. These contain reverse transcriptase, carcinogenic enzyme, Epstein-Barr viruses, cytomegaloviruses, the herpes-type viruses, mycoplasma, bacteria. They're a cross between a bacteria and a virus. And in fact, Garth Nicholson, whose work on Gulf War syndrome I'll show you in just a second, he found that among 55% of the Gulf War syndrome veterans, he found a mycoplasma incognitus. Now, mycoplasmas are very, very common vaccine contaminants, but this particular mycoplasma was very, very unique because you see, 30% of the 55% held a AIDS envelope virus gene attached to it, which weaponized it, which allowed it to go deep, very deep inside the cells, into the cell nucleus, which made it very, very difficult to discover and very, very difficult to treat. And the only place that that could happen would be in a laboratory. Mercury, aluminum, other wonderful things. And are there links to cancers? Well, again, when you consider that all cancers were flatlined, all of them, except for lung cancer, which started to increase with smoking, but all of the cancers were flatlined from the early 1900s, where the cancer registries began, until the 1970s, when all of a sudden they started to skyrocket. And particularly what was skyrocketing were 4 unique cancers: lymphoma, prostate, breast, and melanoma. Now I've thrown out melanoma here, just to give the authorities the benefit of the doubt, because we have ozone depletion, we have more radiation than ever on our planet, and let's say skin cancer, melanoma is associated with this. So let's give them a break. But take a look at this. How unique and interesting. Lymphoma, where the National Cancer Institute researchers, Gallo and others at Bionetics, took lymphoma viruses from Central Africans where it was endemic. It was unique in this very small part of Central Africa. And then they fooled around with it in their labs and they recombined it with everything.
Thank you. I know what you said.
Thank you very much.
I hear from you.
And then prostate. I showed you the diamond where Lytton Bionetics researchers were investigating prostate cancer viruses. And breast, I told you the story about them testing mouse mammary tumor viruses. All of a sudden you see prostate rates skyrocketing, breast cancer rates, continuing going up and skyrocketing in the 1990s. Now you understand where these things are coming from. Same thing with chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome, with all of its massive amount of symptoms. And then with regard to the overlap between CFIDS and Gulf War syndrome, they're virtually identical. This is Garth Nicholson's work where he shows you the overlapping symptoms of Gulf War syndrome and chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome. It's just amazing. It's obvious. It's vaccine contamination-induced conditions. So I want to thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your presence here. I want to end, however, by sharing with you 2 things that you can do with this information. The first thing that you have to do is, because of the viruses, you've got to boost your immune system and your families and your children's immune systems in every which way possible. How do you do that? Well, you do that not with magic bullets. There are no magic bullets. You hear claims about things like colloidal silver. I'm not opposed to colloidal silver. I take colloidal silver. I give it to my children. But don't expect it to be a magic bullet, because it's not. You hear the claims, the advertisers, the people who want to make money. They tell you that it's proven to kill over 600 different microorganisms. Well, I'm sorry. I told you that by 1970, the World Health Organization and the National Cancer Institute had isolated and distributed well over 70,000 different strains of viruses alone. So don't think that there is one magic bullet. Think that there is a holistic strategy, a multidisciplinary approach to self-care that you need to follow. And this is how you boost your immune system. You improve everything you can improve physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, environmentally, and above all, spiritually. That is the prescription for success in the age of the current and coming plagues. Physically, what do? Boost your immune system through nutrition. Avoid the meats. I can spend a lot of time going into this. But because the number one thing, lots of clean water, air, exercise, nutrients, micronutrients, because the soils are depleted, we've got to add the vitamins, mineral supplements, and many, many companies are developing now to develop these, and that's precisely why the World Health Organization Codex Alimentarius legislation is pending now to eliminate these things from us. Food and Drug Administration of the United States, medical mafia are taking these from us. This is why. They don't want us to have the only things that can help us. In fact, it was in the United States in the 1930s when Congress met, legislators heard that because the soils were depleted of nutrients and micronutrients, the immune systems were going to fail of human beings. So, mentally, emotionally, you want to reduce stress. You want to think positively. Emotionally, you reduce stress in relationships by communicating effectively. Developing loving, supportive relationships. Work on communication skills, active listening, that type of thing. Once you do that, you build trust and love in relationships. Social support, social health, love and belonging. What happens with Maslow's hierarchy of human needs after you establish love and belonging? In a family or extended family, community, you develop what's called self-esteem, a miraculous thing. Self-esteem, that we know who we are as human beings and we're okay with ourselves. We know that we're loving, capable, worthy of giving and receiving this incredibly magnificent gift called love, caring, and sharing. It's uplifting, totally. And that connects us. Then, Maslow says, to self-actualization. Next step. We automatically go to self-actualize, to fulfill some great longing, some greater purpose in life that in every human being around the face of the planet, regardless of race, color, religion, every one of us wants to serve society in some meaningful way, serve others. That's the spiritual endowment that we all got. And then the spiritual aspects of who we are so important. My grandfather is a wonderful lesson for this. Self-esteem. Minister Louis Farrakhan, when they had the Million Man March, it was supposed to be centered on building self-esteem in the black man in the United States. Self-esteem is so important. You know why? One of the major reasons why we're talking about tonight, self-esteem, if you think about it. Self-esteem, you know who you are. You're capable, worthy, loving, caring. You're magnificent. God created you that way. And if you do not know who you are, then how can you expect your immune system, which functions to identify the difference between self and non-self, cancer cell versus normal cell, seeks out and destroys that which is not self, heals, saves that which is self. How then, if you don't know who you are, can you expect your immune system to recognize the difference between self and non-self either? It can't. That's why you need to know who you are, and that's why the Illuminati, the international blood banksters, don't want you to know who you are. They educate us into ignorance. In the United States, it's called the dumbing down of America now. So my grandfather is a great lesson for this, and the spiritual endowment, the purpose in life. Great example of how powerful spiritual endowment is in defeating every cancer, every virus. My grandfather died at age 93 because he wanted to die. It was his time. His story goes like this. Unique thing about my grandfather, he was a chain smoker from his early 20s. And he smoked in a bizarre way. He would smoke unfiltered Camel cigarettes. And he would smoke them in the most insane way. He would cut them into thirds and only smoke the hottest, most tar and nicotine-ridden smoke at every puff. And he lived to 93. And his greatest life purpose was to care for his wife.
Did he light his cigarette with a lighter or with a match?
With a match.
With a match.
With a match. He burned his fingers sometimes. strange man. But I loved him dearly. We were very close. So his greatest gift in his life was his wife, who he cared and shared with for over 60 years. And what happened was, my grandfather was also, let me tell you a little bit more about him, he was a very religious man. See, I'm Jewish. My background is Jewish. He was a very Orthodox Jewish man. And I also am a little strange. I accepted Jesus Christ into my life, into my heart, many years ago. So that makes me a Messianic Jew. You know, some Jewish folks have difficulty with that, you know, but it's okay. At any rate, so my grandfather was a very devout Orthodox Jew who literally laked tefillin. You know what that means? It means he would daily, morning, noon, and night, for 3 hours a day, he would dress himself up in his prayer shawls and put on his yarmulke and bind the Holy Scriptures to his wrist and to his forehead. And he would be, and I would watch him, be in a meditative trance and what's called daven. He would daven. He would be praying and meditating to God. And he did that. It's a magnificent thing for me to watch when I was young. And one Christmas, around Christmas time, this tragedy began. They went out for a walk. They lived in Atlantic City, a couple of blocks from the boardwalk, and it was icy on the street. My grandmother, who was about 90 years old at the time, she fell down and broke her hip. And they took her to the hospital. They pieced her together there. And then the doctor told my father and my uncle, my father's brother, that they should put my grandparents in a nursing home because they lived on a second floor apartment. They couldn't have my grandfather, 93, bringing all the things upstairs all the time for her, and he couldn't take care of her. So my father said to my grandfather, you know, Dad, we better put you in a nursing home, you and Mom. And he said to my father, he says, if you do this, I will die. And they said, no, Dad, you're being foolish. Don't think that way. We talked to the doctor, he says, for your best good. He says, if you do this, I will die. And they talked about it some more, and they researched it, and they went back to him, and they said, Dad, we found the perfect nursing home for you and Mom. It's right on the boardwalk. It has a temple in it. You can keep praying 3 times a day in a more beautiful surrounding. You'll have other people there to pray with, play with. You can walk the boardwalk. You can play cards. Mom will be well cared for. He says, if you do this, I will die. They did it. 3 weeks later, he was dead. He died so fast they couldn't believe. They didn't understand it. What could he have died from? They ordered an autopsy. Even the doctors wanted to know. And I was standing from here to where you are when the doctor came from the morgue and said to my father, Mr. Horowitz, for the life of me, I can't understand how this man could have lived the last 20 years. Every bone, muscle, and organ in his entire body was riddled with cancer. You see, what kept this man alive was his deep spiritual devotion and love for his wife, his purpose in life. That is the power that we have been innately endowed with as human beings, to love and care and share for those in our families, extended families, communities. And if we're so powerful and so spiritually involved, why stop there? Why not take it for the whole world? So, if you think about this politically, political action, well, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can get the book, get the other books, make yourself knowledgeable about what's going on, share it with those you love, help us get into the libraries and the bookstores, that's wonderful. Call your talk show hosts, wonderful. Write letters, There's a website that you should know about. It's our internet website where we link to all the organizations and individuals who are making a difference in this area. We spent about $2,500 to create a website where you, for example, in the United States at least, you press up the map, the United States, down pops all the legislators' names, address, telephone numbers, email addresses. Here in this audience, you have people who are starting that type of political process. That's why we're asking you to put your names down on this list so that we can network with you to make a difference. So the email address and the website address is www.tetrahedron.org. Those of you who purchased the book, it's in your book. www.tetrahedron.org. And there is an FTP downloadable file. You can spend 3 hours perusing the literature that you can download for free, including a chapter-by-chapter summary of the book if you can't afford the book this evening. Now, there's also links to all the organizations, as I said, including holistic health alternative therapy organizations. There's links to the CDC, there's links to Merck. Hey, why don't you write them a letter and tell them how you feel about what they're doing? Now, also, I want to share with you what this political action is about and what really this whole thing means in a greater perspective. You see, I didn't sleep for 9 months when I came upon much of this information. I was very afraid. I was very concerned. I don't want that for you. I want you to know that this is a celebration, and I want to tell you why. And it only struck me as that not that long ago when I got the big picture. Because you see that I believe in God. I believe in spirituality. I don't believe that there is anything but one God that serves everybody. Now, you know, the Jews are waiting for the Messiah. The Christians are waiting for this Messiah's return. How different is that, really? The Muslims are waiting for the Messiah. And interestingly enough, I found out that the Nation of Islam in the United States actually accepted Jesus Christ as a bona fide Messiah. Most Christians in the United States don't have any clue that that's the case. I heard that right from the mouth of Minister Louis Farrakhan. So, at any rate, you know, we've been divided to deceive. Now, I would recommend, after you read the book Emerging Viruses, AIDS, and Ebola, to go back into, reread if you haven't, or if you've read it already, or read if you haven't read it at all, regardless of whether you're Jew or Gentile, Christian or Muslim, read the book of Revelation. It's in the New Testament. I know it's still available in good hotels and motels. At any rate, you will read in there some very, very interesting parallels between what I write in the book, Emerging Viruses, and what it talks about in the book of Revelation. For example, it goes in there and talks about the fall of Babylon. And when you read the fall of Babylon, just for the heck of it, substitute the fall of New York City. And I could spend another 20 minutes telling you why that's the case. I'm not going to. Just do that for me. And when it talks about those, quote, who have fornicated with the devil and deceived all the wealthiest men of all the nations, the merchants, substitute the Rockefeller boys. Because you see, it goes on to say that those who have fornicated with the devil and deceived all the wealthiest men of all the nations, the kings, are those who, quote, stolen the blood of the prophets and the saints. And of course, I told you who stole everyone's blood, but the Rockefeller-led New York City Blood Bank, the International Blood Banksters. So it goes on then to say that this angel with a sickle comes down and cuts a cluster of grapes that falls into Babylon's winepress, and Babylon's wine flows out full of impurities into the rivers and the streams, and it says that the rivers and the streams are the people. And what is flowing into the rivers and the streams of the people around the world associated with the current and coming plagues, but the contaminated vaccines and the contaminated blood directed all by your Rockefeller-led medical industrial complex, you see. But why I want you to read this is for the last couple paragraphs. Because you see who wins in the end. You see, it talks about in the end, when we usher in the Messianic age, when we have the paradigm shift, when the new age comes about of spirituality in the Aquarian age, when we have Yisroel, literally when the lion lies down with the lamb, we have peace on earth. It says right in there that this will come to be. It is then when the crystal clear waters will once again flow through the rivers and the streams, whose banks will be lined by the trees, whose leaves bring about the healing of the nations. You see, it's in the leaves. That's why they want to take it away. That's what Codex Alimentarius legislation is about. That's why you need to get active politically on the Codex Alimentarius legislation issue. Help everybody defeat that. And it's going to be real hard. The last time, you see, we got our movie stars to get involved. This time, it's GATT. For the countries that don't do it, sanctions will be taken against the United States, Canada, other countries. It's a big fight, big challenge. But you see, the glorious reality is this was all God's plan. All of the prophets, from the Hopi Indians to a variety of prophets, have predicted this for years and years. And part of the solution is going to be that Satan hates himself. You see, God loves, God's in charge. Satan, the fallen angel here, and all of his warriors, Rockefeller et al., hate themselves. They don't have self-esteem. They've been overpowered by greed and power and evil. We haven't talked about the Rothschilds, the old money. One of the reasons I'm probably still alive is because there's an ongoing war. It's a building war between the Rothschild, the old money, and the nouveau riche, the peon Rockefellers. Rothschilds have been funding publications targeting the Rockefellers, and mine does the same. You see, these people are going to kill themselves because they haven't learned self-esteem and what true meaning of love, the essence of caring, is about. Now, I expect some miracle to happen that's associated with this. I do. And I think it's going to happen pretty soon. But before it happens, there's going to have to be a lot of pain. A lot of pain. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But because you are here tonight, you now have a little flashlight to help guide you through the coming 6, 7 years where things are going to get very, very dark. And if you follow my prescription, I guarantee you that you will be led and directed to safety. I feel it very strongly in my heart as I've had discussions with numerous people in this audience. And those of you who have been spiritually endowed and spiritually attuned, over the last year you have felt a surge in guidance, a surge in intuition. Because as this end times draws near, there will need to be at least 144,000 followers who will then share the true message with several other million who will then begin the new age, the age of enlightenment, the age of love, the Messianic era. And then you and I, God willing, and our children, which is why I'm doing this, will live 1,000 years where we should be living, on a loving, peaceful earth. Thank you so much, and God bless all.